Good morning, everyone. I'm happy to be conducting this webinar, by the end of which I will be asking everyone to ask oneself, are you cyber safe? Thank you so much for joining me to discuss a topic which is very, very close to my heart, and also, given the digital era that we are in, is critical for all of us to be aware of, especially given today's digitally driven era and, of course, our booming digital economy. To begin with, I'd like to thank GemAtlas for organizing this webinar. Sorry, thank you. I'd like to thank GemAtlas for organizing this webinar, which is very, very important, not just for the gem industry also to be up to speed with cybercrime, but also for everybody personally and professionally to be aware of cybercrime and the threats it poses, and of course, to know more about what we can do to be cyber safe. So before I begin and get into the details of what we're going to discuss today, I'd like to start with a brief introduction about myself, who I am and what I do. My name is Advocate Priyanka Pandit. I am a practicing advocate with the High Court of Bombay in Mumbai, India. My practice focuses on litigation. I am deeply passionate about criminal and cyber law. I have a bachelor's degree in legal sciences and a master's degree in law. I have a PG diploma in cybercrime and international cybercrime. I am certified by the Data Security Council of India as a privacy lead assessor. I am presently also pursuing my privacy professional certification. And my dissertation for my master's was focused on the fundamental right to privacy and data protection laws in India. Now, before I dive into the million-dollar question, which I posed at the beginning, which was, are we cyber safe? I'd like to start with giving us all a quick insight into some basic and important concepts which we must familiarize ourselves with to understand the risks that we expose ourselves to, and whether voluntarily or inadvertently, owing to our dependency on technology to do business today or to trade or transact today, it is very, very important for us to be familiar with certain concepts. So let's begin with the very basic. What is cybercrime? In the age of the internet, criminals too have updated their modus operandi. They are committing crimes at the click of a button now. Most of us have heard of identity theft, banking frauds, hacking, data theft, man-in-the-middle attacks, etc. These are rampant throughout the web world today. Cybercrime has no geographic boundary, giving cybercriminals the world on a platter as their playing field. It is now important for us as cyber citizens to familiarize ourselves with what crimes we may fall prey to and what we should be aware of, so that these risks can be avoided and prompt and effective steps can be taken in time to, if not completely avoid, but at least keep these crimes in check. We're all aware in India of the Digital India initiative, which is now being vigorously driven by our government. This aims at bringing every single citizen online. It's already happening to most of us. All of us who have a PAN card, who have a mobile phone, who have a debit card, who have a bank account, who have an Aadhaar card or a driving license. We're all online. Our data is stored in certain repositories controlled by government agencies, which has collaborated all of our sensitive information in one space, which at the click of a button is very, very possible to get into the wrong hands. But I will come back to that a little bit later. Now, that being said, we understand the importance of e-commerce, and the digital movement has now forced us all to become cyber citizens. Most of us are dependent on the various applications and platforms which are available to us, just not only just to do business, but even to take care of our daily needs. For example, DigiLocker. There is an application driven by the government now which gives you access to all of your government issued licenses, documents, etc. in one platform. Recently, a judgment held that showing anybody on authority your digital documents stored in DigiLocker will be enough and you need not carry your originals. That's the kind of power that being online and having a digital application driven by the government gives. Your identity is now online, your authorities are now online. Paytm. How many of us today, especially post demonetization in India, are dependent on Paytm for the smallest of transactions? It could be for 10 rupees, 15 rupees. We take an Uber, we Paytm. We order food online, we use Paytm. We want to send money to friends, we Paytm. Online banking. We are no longer in an age where we can afford to stand in long queues. In fact, banks are promoting their online applications to ensure that more and more citizens use their online banking facilities instead of coming to the branch and getting into physical banking transactions. The RBI has, in fact, mandated certain banks to provide doorstep services now to senior citizens and disabled customers who are unable to come to the bank and branch. So online banking is slowly the new way of banking that we're all getting used to and we're all moving towards. Of course, for the convenience it offers, and of course, for the safety that it holds. Wireless cards, we've got wireless debit cards and credit cards today. At the tap of a card to a wireless machine, we are no longer required to authenticate our transaction with the wireless cards. So our use and dependency on technology to now transact financially, either personally or professionally, to do trade or otherwise, is absolutely something that cannot be avoided. That being said, it becomes very, very important for us to know what information is shared by us, to whom, and how we transact with third parties. Now, speaking about information, I must touch upon a topic again very close to heart, which is data privacy and its protection. Most of us are aware of the recent judgment delivered in K. Puttaswamy versus the Union of India and others, where the apex court held that privacy too is a fundamental right protected by our constitution. Now, what does this mean for us as lay people? Does it mean that it's a fundamental right that we can just go ahead and freely impose? No. Much like every single fundamental right, it comes with a correlating duty. The duty on us as citizens and responsible cyber citizens is to make sure that we are aware of what our information, what information is exposed, what privacy do we want to protect for ourselves, what steps do we want to take to be cautious about making sure that our information, our data is not unnecessarily exposed to third parties without authorization. And if that happens, we must take the ownership to go ahead and report that misuse or abuse, that contravention or offense when we are in the middle of something that has not been authorized by us. How do we go about doing this? How do we know that we are in the middle of a cybercrime or we are being victimized or our information is not being used in the manner it was required to? For this, it is important for us to first be aware of the existing laws and frameworks that we have presently in our country. Although cybercrime is very, very nascent in India, our policies, protocols, and acts are in the formative stage. We still do have certain basic safeguards in place. So it's best to start with knowing what we have at the present moment. Which brings me to one of the legislations that is as of now the only wholesome legislation that we have in place, which is the Information Technology Act of 2000, which has been amended from time to time. Now, what does this act describe? Apart from the contraventions and offenses, the act also describes what digital signature certificates are. It also talks about electronic documents that we use for trade. It talks about electronic evidence which can be used to certify certain transaction. It talks about the digital service agencies. It talks about registrars and such. It talks about the cyber appellate tribunal which is required to be formed so that tomorrow, if we've got anybody who has been a victim to any sort of contravention or offense to do with cybercrime within the country, they can be brought to the book. Now, speaking of that, it also defines contraventions such as penalty for damage to computer systems. So when I say this, the Act safeguards us against offenses such as hacking, tampering, unauthorized access, denial of service attacks, destroying or disrupting a computer system, etc. It also penalizes body corporates who wrongly use our data. And we will talk about this when we discuss offenses. And of course, I'm happy to answer any questions at the end of this webinar about these contraventions. And of course, imposition on the body corporates, because this is something that all businesses must be very, very wary of. We're now in the age of GDPR. For all those who are transacting out of India, especially in the gem industry, because the gem industry, again, has no boundary for its customers and dealings. So, the contravention for not protecting the data which a body corporate holds is also something that can be penalized and compensated by under the Act. Apart from that, of course, offenses which include tampering of source code documents, dishonestly receiving stolen data by use of a computer source, identity theft, cheating by personation. Identity theft and cheating by personation are very, very common modus operandis used by most cyber criminals to commit various types of crimes. We will come to that when we discuss what kind of crimes we can be exposed to. And of course, violation of privacy, cyber terrorism, pornography, obscene materials, sexually explicit materials being transmitted online, and publishing such obscene materials with the use of technology. All of this is also an offense under the Act. Given that we have an Act that defines all of these contraventions and offenses, it is important for us to understand now what sensitive personal data and information means. Now, most of us who are business houses and are subscribing to this webinar today will be interested in knowing what SPDI is, sensitive personal data and information, because this is the basis of the responsibility any body corporate has to keep somebody else's information safe, to have reasonable practices and protocols in place to ensure that no violation, no data breach happens. Because if this is not done by us as a business, then we're in trouble. So, what does SPDI include? What does sensitive information for us include? This could consist of any of the following, which I will narrate, or a combination of each of them or some of them. So, it can include our passwords. It can include our financial information, such as our bank account or our debit card, credit card numbers, etc. It can also include other payment instrument details. It can include our physical, physiological, or health conditions. It can include our medical records and history. It can include our sexual orientation. Those of us who are familiar with the very recent 377 judgment will also know, if you've read that judgment, sexual orientation has been linked to privacy, and therefore information about our sexual orientation also becomes sensitive data. Biometric information, those of us who have an Aadhaar card and a driving license, the new driving license, will know that our biometric is also captured before these documents are issued to us. So that is sensitive information. Any details relating to above in any combination will comprise of your sensitive and personal information. Given that we're dependent on technology for almost everything, like I previously discussed, from our food to our banking needs to our grocery to the e-commerce or trade that we do, the buy and sell. All of this now makes it invariable that our information is available online on some platform or the other. If you've got a Fire Stick at home, You've got an Amazon account, your sensitive information is online. If you've got a smartphone, chances are your sensitive information is online, either with your Apple iCloud account or your Google account. If you've got a SIM card which is linked to your bank account, your sensitive information is online. If you've got a bank account linked to your Aadhaar, your sensitive information is online. So, what do we do if we become a victim to any one of these cybercrimes, which is a grave concern because at one click, our entire information can either be erased, much worse, used without our knowledge to our detriment for sure. Our identity can be at risk, we can be defamed, we can be spoofed. A lot of things that we can be exposed to, we may be unaware of because of a certain set of information that has been put up innocently online by us. If we are on Facebook and we are habitual of putting up photographs or checking in at places, our behavior information is online, our analytical information is online, our personal information is online, our habits, our friends, our social circles are online. They're online for anybody to access. So, what do we do when we're a victim of cybercrime? What do most of us do? We don't report it. What we do is we sit back and wonder whether or not this has really happened to us. And then we give up because of fear or disbelief and we deter in reporting this crime. Report this crime. The minute you think or feel or know that something wrong has happened, either to you or your business or to somebody around you, report it. Report it because you will be surprised at the level of infrastructure that exists in India today to battle cybercrime. We've got a cyber cell in place who has the power to investigate these crimes with the use of very, very talented ethical hackers. Some of the most talented ethical hackers and cybercrime investigators are very much in India and helping our administration and our investigation agencies to book these criminals. You'll be surprised at how many cyber criminals are brought to book just because of vigilant reporting of this cybercrime. What do you do when you suddenly feel that something is amiss in your bank account? Or you think that it's a very minor amount, but you don't want to worry about it. You think only 1 or 2 rupees is missing, or 50 rupees is missing. The other day, I was in a bank and this customer was arguing about 50 rupees being missing from his account. And the bank's teller's approach was very casual. He said, "It's just 50 rupees. Why this is the third time you're coming here. Why are you so worried about this?" This attitude, this lacks in valuing our own money and financial fraud has to stop. 50 rupees from one account with every customer each day or each month can amount to a melee attack, which most of us may not even be aware of. It could be a 50 paise change, but that 50 paise going from a million customers to one bank account is going to make him a crorepati. So report the crime. Report any inconsistency. Take steps, be vigilant. The Reserve Bank of India has already put in place safeguards that ensures you to be indemnified against such losses if you are a victim to any of such crimes. There is a specific timeline. At the end of this webinar, I will be urging you to do some searches and do some research so that you can get more familiar with what all we've discussed today. So there are RBI guidelines which have been issued to banks to indemnify their customers against any such losses and financial frauds that they may be a victim of. Now, of course, a question in many of our minds is, as businesses, why should we be worried about all of this? I mean, what is really the possibility that anybody is going to come and book us for something that somebody else has done, or something that not even one of our employees has done, or maybe one of our rogue employee does this, right? Most of us have our businesses in the gem industry which have employers ranging to about 100 plus or 200. It's very, very difficult for us to manage every single employee's ethics and behavior and conduct. But why should we as businesses be wary of whether or not we are taking the right steps to keep data private, whether or not we are keeping the right policies and protocols in place? We are required to do this because we are responsible to our customers for keeping their information safe. We are vicariously responsible for the acts and omissions committed by our employees who are at the end of the day acting as our agents. We are responsible to make sure that the information that we use and collect and process for a certain purpose are limited only to that, and nobody is making any unauthorized use of that information. Because all of this, if put to wrong use, is going to make us as a business liable at the end of the day. You could be holding your employees' data, for example. You could be as a admin or an HR, you could be holding just their date of birth, their nationality, their sex, their address, their mobile numbers all together. So that will still make you responsible to have certain policies in place. If you have a website, if you're an e-commerce or a trading platform, if you have a website that's your online brochure to the products and services you offer, you're required to have a privacy policy. You're required to have this policy in place to make sure that your users know and understand that while they're just casually surfing your website, you are collecting certain data. You're going to be using that data to analyze them, their behavior, their shopping patterns, maybe to better your business, but at the same time, you are capturing their IP address, you're capturing their location, you're capturing their behavior analytics, you're probably capturing their username and password if you've got a website that requires users to sign in for certain services. So it's important for us to have a privacy policy in place. It's mandated and required by the law. It's important for us to let our users know that they have a choice whether or not they allow us to control their data, to forget their data. When we talk about just data privacy and the framework, there is a lot of movement now with the Justice Sri Krishna Committee report out on the privacy bill. There is a framework. MIT, the Ministry of Information and Technology, has published a white paper on what data protection laws and frameworks can be implemented in India. So at this stage, when the law is just in its nascent framework, when it's still being built, it's best for us to get ourselves updated and know about these things, because tomorrow it's not going to fall on your head like a hammer. Having said that, why should we worry about all of this when our business is just local, some of us might say? Maybe some of us will say we're not online, we're not digital, we don't transact with customers who are beyond our certain boundaries. So why should we worry about this? You need to worry about this because even if you are not online per se or offering something actively, you're storing information on a digital platform. If you've got a computer or a laptop or a printer in your office, you're online as far as a criminal is concerned. If you've got a hard drive or a phone or a bank account that is linked to these businesses, you're online. Cybercrime has no territory. Let's understand that we are always exposed and we're always open to any hacker, any skillful hacker who has a way to subside and anonymously get access to our system, no matter how big or small. So, what should we watch out for when we're trading online or when we're interacting with someone online? Any suspicious behavior. When I say suspicious behavior, use your sixth sense. The minute you find something amiss in the experience of handling customers in the line of business that you are, if you find something suspicious or out of place, be wary. If you find someone being over friendly to you, giving you all the leeways and luxuries that you would otherwise be very, very difficult to get, be wary. If there are too good to be true offers, be very, very wary. Most of us in the gem industry must be aware of the incident that had happened with certain group of jewelers who were enticed by a too good to be true offer, asked to come to Delhi. All expenses were paid. They were put up in wonderful hotels, and at the end of the day, they were kidnapped, put to ransom for their own lives. And it all started with a simple email enticing them to take up an offer which was too good to be true. So these are the things that we must watch out for. Like I've said before, we are at a very, very nascent stage compared to what is happening in the world out there already. We're all on Facebook, we're on WhatsApp for businesses, we have a Twitter handle, we're on LinkedIn, our professional, academics, personal information, likes, dislikes, hobbies, everything is out there. All of those who have sons and daughters of marriageable ages are putting up information about their children on matrimonial websites. We are hearing about frauds that are happening because of these websites, because for these criminals, analyzing our behavior and finding out information about us is becoming very, very easy. As I speak to all of you all today, most of us are probably Googling me already. So most of my information, which is also already available online, is accessible to you freely. So having said that, it's always possible that we could be the next victim of a cybercrime. It does not mean that I want to scare you to become more physical than digital. It's a boon, it is not a pain. It is important, it is going to become better with time. We are going to be more secure, but it also vests a lot of responsibility on us as cyber citizens to take the right steps and do the right things to make sure that we are not taking our security and our privacy too lightly. So let's get ourselves up to date. Let's get ourselves to familiarize ourselves with what we should do. Let's put some best practices in place so that we become more responsible as cyber citizens and we are able to prevent becoming victims to such cyber crimes which are afoot. So to conclude, I would urge you to know more about certain things if you're not already familiar with them. Please Google more about the deep web so that you'll know what all is included when we're talking about cyber crimes and criminal activities using technology online. Please try to Google more about cyber crimes, the type of crimes that there are. Read more and more about online frauds, because when you read these articles, you may be aware of certain things that you're probably doing wrong at your end of the business. If you're an online business, if you're an e-commerce business, go through your policies, sit with your lawyers, ask them to explain to you the provisions available to you, the obligations on you. Conduct a privacy audit. When I say that, conduct an audit to understand who is getting access to what information and whether they're required to have this access. Be aware of what data breaches can happen. Be aware of the data that you're collecting. You may not sometimes as a business be aware of what information you're collecting and what you could be responsible for. Be aware of the access that your employees have when they're doing jobs out of your offices, because you don't know or you cannot always control their actions, but you may still be held responsible for something that they do while they're on the job. And of course, be aware of future crimes. So that's with this, I will conclude my discussion and I will turn to the questions that are slowly piling up on my screen. But once again, thank you for joining me in this webinar. I hope that I've made you aware of some of the basic concepts of cybercrime and how you can tackle them proactively. Should you have any questions or concerns apart from the ones that I'll answer, I'm available on abvpandit@gmail.com. So please write to me. I'll be happy to answer those questions for you as well. Okay, coming to the first question, how to file an online complaint for cybercrime. So we have a cyber cell website. If you could please go to a cyber, if you're in India, we have a cyber cell website. If you could log on there, they will give you an email address to which you can file a complaint online. Even the Mumbai police, Maharashtra police has a website which allows you to file complaints online and they will respond to you. For those of you who are on Twitter, you can also hashtag the Mumbai police and they will give you the attention that you need if you are in the middle of anything that requires police action or help. All right. The next question is, Priyanka, are there any obligations on cybercrime cells to report a crime or a financial regulatory body once they're informed, or is it individual or business responsibility? All right. So once any crime is reported, there is no obligation on the investigation agency to disclose that as such. The minute a crime is registered, it becomes public information in India. If you are connected to this in any manner or you want information to this, of course, we have the right to information through which you can ask for certain disclosures which could be given to you. But yes, the complainant, the first informant, so to speak, in criminal law, it is only them who are privy to what action is being taken, and they have the right to go and check on what is happening with reference to their complaint. But if you think you are in any manner required to or part of a certain crime which has been booked under the RTR, you too can seek information that you need. So Bhavesh's question, I'm using an unsecured Wi-Fi from a neighbor. Can they discover my login name and password? What about my IP? Can they track me with GMAP location using IP? Well, first off, Bhavesh, since you already know that you're using an unsecured Wi-Fi from a neighbor, I would ask you to stop that. Also, the fact that you're using an unsecured Wi-Fi means not only your neighbor, but anybody who wants to track you or your usage will be able to find you. They will get access to your login name and your password eventually. If it's a hacker, he will definitely locate you with your IP. Even if you're using an IP hopper, it is very, very possible for a skillful hacker to get to you. So I would require you to use caution at that. Now, Hetal has a question. Can you share some tips to prevent cybercrimes? Now, Hetal, this is a very, very wide question to my mind. Tips to prevent cybercrime, like I discussed in the discussion previously, there are a lot of safeguards that you yourself can put in place to make sure that you don't become a victim to cybercrime. Keep updating your passwords. Don't keep everything in one place. Try to keep creating separate usernames on every platform instead of using one email ID to log in everywhere, because then that becomes a kind of a central place for anybody to access everything that you have subscribed to. For example, don't use your Gmail login for your bank and your Facebook and your Twitter and your Amazon, because with that one hack, if somebody wants to get access to everything that you have, with just getting access to your Gmail password, he's privy to all the other information that is linked to your one account. So don't do that. Try to keep combinations of special characters and strong passwords. That way, even bots who are programmed to hack your passwords, etc., will find it very, very difficult, if not impossible, to hack your account. Okay, Shobha, people say that Gmail is easily hacked. Is it true or not? This is something that we'll have to check with Gmail now, won't it? Of course, they will deny it. It's not just Gmail. Any of our email accounts can be easily hacked. For those of us who are new to this or not very used to this, there is something called two-step authentication, which I will urge every user to put in place. This means not only will you require your password to sign in, but you will also be required to give an OTP generated on a registered number or an alternate email address that can be used in case of backup. Now, if you're an Android user, Google also allows you the option to use two-step authentication in a separate way apart from generating an OTP. You can download the Authenticator app on your phone, and with the help of that, you can log into your Gmail. You can make it more safe. As far as safety and security is concerned, Google being one of the biggest players out there, of course, they have a lot of security protocols in place. So that and any other information will be helpful for you. All right. So Darshan, how to report a cybercrime? Now, and your next question is also, what is a cyberspace? Now, what is a cyberspace is a separate session altogether. I will ask you to do some research on that, Darshan. Please Google what cyberspace is. Please Google what the deep web is, so you will understand the concepts there. And how to report a cybercrime, like I said, if you're within the country, within India, then of course we've got the cyber cell, which is online, which will allow you to report this no matter where you are in the country. Your local police stations also have email addresses now, so you should be able to email them as well if you are not physically able to get to a police station by yourself. I hope that answers your question. All right, Vishal. Okay, Vishal asks, why is Mac so reliable compared to Windows? Well, that's a great question. To my mind, Mac is more reliable simply because it's a very, very closed platform. Apple has some very, very stringent policies that requires all of its developers and applications to adhere to their norms. So with Apple, it's really their way or the highway. There's no two way about it. Apple does not negotiate or compromise on its security policy under any conditions, which is why it's very, very difficult to hack into a Mac as compared to an Android, which is a more open source platform. An Android allows a lot of open source software and applications to run on its platform freely, and of course with that kind of freedom, there is a lot of freedom of access to a lot of nefarious activity which can also happen, and therefore Windows is a more hackable platform compared to a Mac. All right, Avi, ma'am, if some personal photographs are published online which are compromising, what should be the first step, as complaining with police may take time? While I understand your concern there, Avi, honestly, without a complaint, there will be very little that can formally be done to address your concern there. So, my first suggestion would be to not keep any compromising photos in an online mode. When I say that, keep them on a pen drive or whatever. If you want to keep them digital and you want to save these kind of photographs, it's your personal choice. So, you may choose to keep them. Don't link them to your Google Photos, etc., because that will then give unauthorized access. Keep them in a closed folder if at all you're required to keep them on cyberspace for whatever reason. Keep them close, keep them to yourself. Should that still be compromised or hacked or published anywhere without your knowledge, then most of these publication platforms themselves allow you to report these unauthorized publications, and they can also from there and take down content. If you move a complaint with the requisite authority, then the authority can also take the required steps to get in touch with these publishing platforms and ask them to take down the content which has been put up without your consent. All right. So that brings me to the last question that has been put up for me. Are there any more questions coming up for us? No? Done. Great. So thank you, everyone. I hope this was as interesting and intriguing and fun for you as this was for me. I hope you all have a wonderful Saturday morning. It's a Saturday morning, and I hope to see you all again soon. Okay, one last question. How fast can the remedy be provided in such cases? Speed of the remedy, of course, is a very case-to-case thing, but depending on the information that you're able to give the investigation agency and the kind of, if you're lucky and there is a local service which is responsible for any of this kind of publication, then you can expect very, very speedy remedies in this situation. So, best of luck. All right. Thank you very much.